Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. The Empyrean pearls that were originally targeting Huo Yuhao suddenly stretched out and flew around the 8-ringed Soul Doluor's body. Not only did they not hurt him, they wrapped around in front of him and blocked the attacks from the dagger section's other 9 members. This control of the Empyrean blaze was just perfect. What a cunning fellow. Wang Yiheng's face blackened. He didn't go ahead to rescue the Class 7 Soul Engineers who were plummeting towards the ground, because those people had clearly awakened during their freefall. They were working hard to control their bodies, but they weren't in much danger even though they were cutting very sorry figures. 365 pearls bolted toward Huo Yuhao like shooting stars under Wang Yiheng's control. These fiery shooting stars weren't just blindly attacking, instead, they seemed to resemble a web that was stretching out as they closed in around him. Wang Yiheng also made his move as he accelerated in pursuit as fast as he could. Huo Yuhao was trying to run away, but he didn't forget to retrieve his long-range soul controller to detonate the high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tools that he didn't have time to take away. A series of explosions could be heard from behind. Wang Yiheng didn't have to look to know what had happened, and his expression became incredibly malevolent. He didn't have to ask to know that those high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tools that they had lost contact with probably didn't end well. Bastard. This bastard. I'll kill him. The Empyrean blaze was simply too quick. Huo Yuhao was already using his full strength, but the Empyrean blaze was still continuously bearing down on him. The scorching heat and sweltering air kept gaining on him, but the temperature didn't affect Huo Yuhao much, because he relied on his Ice Empress armor and his solo battle armor for protection. What he had to do now was accelerate, accelerate, accelerate. Huo Yuhao was quite near the Star Luo Empire's northwestern field army. He only had to keep this up for just a little while more before his problems would end. Close. Wang Yiheng exclaimed, and the Empyrean blaze suddenly expanded before it abruptly accelerated and closed up. Wang Yiheng used almost 10% of his soul power for this move. However, Huo Yuhao's figure also suddenly picked up speed at that moment. He was like a beam of flowing light, as he rocketed across the skies and reappeared in the distance. He can still accelerate, that's not possible. Only a titled Doluor can reach that speed, but that fellow's soul power undulations show that is clearly not a titled Doluor. Another figure appeared within Wang Yiheng's vision, and that person turned to run along with the first one. Yes, Shusansha was the one who came to provide support for Huo Yuhao. Shusansha had actually been waiting at a location not far from Huo Yuhao from beginning to end, and he communicated with Huo Yuhao through his spiritual detection. That was the reason why he could save Huo Yuhao in the nick of time. The distance that he had suddenly covered meant that Wang Yiheng's sudden burst of energy achieved nothing. Furthermore, he even paused for a moment in the sky, because he had used too much soul power before he could continue chasing him. When Wang Yiheng was just starting to move again, he suddenly felt a sharp pain on the side of his face, and subconsciously glanced toward his side. But there was nothing there, all he could see was pitch-black darkness. However, there seemed to be a poisonous snake hiding within the darkness, and this poisonous snake was just revealing its sharpest fangs, and was about to swallow him whole. Wang Yiheng didn't know who his opponent in the darkness was. He was worried that the Star Luo Empire would make their move, as they were very close to the Star Luo Empire after all. He would have a hard time if there were several titled Doluor waiting to ambush him in the sky. He had reinforcements from the Sun Moon Empire, but their job at the Mingdo mountain range was for defense. They didn't have enough strength for an offense. That razor-sharp sword intent finally appeared, and Wang Yiheng felt as if the entire black sky was being torn open at that moment. The sword intent was actually vicious, and everything around it seemed to be obliterated. Yet, there seemed to be some kinds of emotions rippling through all that obliteration. There was focus and stubbornness, there was depth and clarity. What is this? Wang Yiheng was a soul master and a soul engineer, but he had never felt strength such as this, as if this strength shouldn't belong to this world at all. Darkness blanketed him in that instant. Wang Yiheng had no choice, but to use his Empyrean blaze to defend himself. Several dozen Empyrean pearls went dark in that moment, and a brilliant golden light glowed in the night sky, while the sword intent was raised to its highest possible level. A beam of sword light cut across the skies. It disappeared in a flash, and raced into the distance before it caught up with Huo Yuhao and Shusansha. This beam even seemed to carry them and accelerate. Wang Yiheng didn't dare to chase them. After the sword intent flew across the sky after it transformed from darkness to light, his several dozen Empyrean pearls that were struck began to crackle with ear-piercing shrillness. Large cracks started to appear even though they didn't break into pieces. Those Empyrean pearls were extremely difficult to forge. Even though their advantage lay in their numbers, every single one of them was a result of his blood and sweat. A single broken piece would cause him great and uncontrollable heartache. No, that fellow. Wang Yiheng suddenly felt that something wasn't right after his momentary confusion. That kind of sword intent made him fearful, but the person channeling that sword intent clearly didn't have enough strength. At least, that person didn't have enough strength to threaten him. I've been tricked. Wang Yiheng's Empyrean blaze fired out once more after he realized that something was amiss, and he continued chasing Huo Yuhao and Shusansha. He was about to explode with anger. They are clearly not very powerful, but they have been deceiving me again and again. Not only have they destroyed so many high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tools, but they have also damaged my Empyrean blaze. They both have to die. Wang Yiheng used his full strength as he lashed out with his Empyrean blaze. He transformed into an enormous ball in mid-air at the same time, and his flying speed suddenly increased exponentially. He wasn't using his flying-type soul tool this time, he was burning his formidable soul power as a titled Doluo. He knew that he only had one chance to attack. If he couldn't catch them with this strike, he would have exceeded the Mingdo mountain range's area of protection, and he could very well become his enemy's prey if that happened. Therefore, he didn't hold back in this attack. Several figures shot into the sky in the distance. There were 5 of them, and they spaced out in a row as they each radiated with different colors. They were all females. The girl in the center burst with bright dragon roars, as a pair of enormous dragon wings stretched out behind her. She transformed into a giant dragon amidst the dragon roars, and her 6th and 7th soul rings flickered at the same time. Radiant Dragon Butterfly, it was Tang Wutong. Even though her form was called Radiant Dragon Butterfly, her martial soul true body was presented entirely in dragon form, but there were waves and curves that resembled a butterfly's wings on the edges of her dragon wings. The aura that she released wasn't just noble and elegant, there was a feeling as if she was looking down on the entire world. Dragon God's Slaughter Dance. Her 6th soul skill. An enormous shadow of a dragon emerged from her radiant dragon butterfly true body, and it immediately transformed into a colossal dragon that was 100 meters long as it went straight for the Empyrean blaze. She wasn't the only one who attacked. Jiang Nan Nan, Yi Gai, Nan Qiuqiu, and Jing Xian all unleashed their strongest soul skills. A large pink python glimmered behind Jiang Nanan's back and circled around her. Jiang Nan transformed into beam after beam of flowing light, as she dashed out closely behind Tang Wutong. The white light that she had shifted into seemed like the radiant dragon butterfly's outer garment, and they combined together just like that. The Empyrean pearls that were at the forefront collided with Jiang Nanan's martial soul true body. They were actually bounced away by some kind of flexible strength, and their fiery strength was not released at all, as if they had been cut off. The Dragon God's Slaughter Dance erupted with eye-catching purple light, and large swathes of Empyrean pearls were blocked off just like that. Tang Wutong used action to prove her formidable strength to everyone, and not even Huo Yuhao had fought with her face-to-face before this. She was forcefully blocking a Class 9 Soul Engineer's signature Class 9 Soul tool. She could be proud of herself even if she could only hold on for a little while. Yi Gai's expression was solemn as she clasped her hands above her head. Her holy sword radiated with intense light as her 4 angel wings stretched out behind her back. Immense light power aggregated as her beautiful frame suddenly flew forward. Nan Qiuqiu disappeared behind her in a flash. Yi Gai overtook Tang Wutong's position in the next moment, and she flew toward a higher altitude. Her radiant holy sword resembled a rainbow as it slashed down towards the manic bull Doluo, Wang Yiheng. Wang Yiheng waved his right hand, and a dozen Empyrean pearls went for the holy sword. The holy sword's radiance was bounced away, but the Empyrean pearl's glow was evidently dimmer than before. Wang Yiheng could feel his heart aching. How can these soul masters, who still seem quite young, have such powerful attacking strength? He wasn't done lamenting when a pinkish beam of light swept up those Empyrean pearls after it flickered from behind the holy sword. Something that made Wang Yiheng absolutely astonished happened. The flames on his Empyrean pearls dimmed, and their explosive strength immediately disappeared. Those pearls began to plummet toward the ground like that, and he couldn't even communicate with them anymore. What was happening? A patch of fog swept over and pulled both Yi Gai and Nan Qiuqiu back. Jiang Nannan retreated as well, and landed back beside Tang Wutong. The Dragon God's slaughter dance was also reaching its end, and the Empyrean blaze finally broke through the enormous dragon shadow. In terms of cultivation, Huo Yuhao and the others were all a far cry from the manic bull Doluo. However, every single one of them was the best of the best. They supported each other again and again as all 8 of them came together, and the 5 girls' assault was like tidal waves as they forcefully blockaded Wang Yiheng. I can't hold back any longer. Wang Yiheng watched as the 3 people who were running away before this stood their ground, and all 8 of them no longer attempted to escape even though they were facing him. He felt a chill run down his spine. He suddenly realized that he had exceeded the area of protection offered by the Mingdo mountain range's long-range soul tools, and this meant that he could no longer receive any reinforcements here. When Huo Yuhao was fleeing earlier, he wasn't struck by the attacks of the long-range soul tools that were installed in the Mingdo mountain range. The main reason was that they couldn't accurately determine his position. Otherwise, the Mad Bull Doluo wouldn't have intervened. Currently, the furthest attack could only reach 30 kilometers. Of course, this wasn't considering stationary soul cannon shells. If there were stationary soul cannon shells, a further range could be achieved. However, soul tools must be able to lock onto the enemy first. Their aerial surveillance soul tools were kept close to the Mingdo mountain range, as the Star Luo Empire's troops inched closer and closer, minimizing losses and damages. This was why their control at further ranges wasn't sufficient. When Huo Yuhao came up with his plan, he had already considered everything. This was why he was reinforced by Shusansha at the extreme boundary of the effective range of their ultra-long-range soul tools. Even if the ultra-long-range soul tools could react in time and fire attacks at them, they would have enough time to escape as the cannon shells traveled towards them. The others were also naturally reinforcing him outside the boundaries of the effective range of the ultra-long-range soul tools. So what if there was a title Doluo? They were 8 against 1. Huo Yuhao wasn't afraid at all. From the distance, streaks of dark blue light were also flying towards them at rapid speed. The evil tyrant Soul Engineer Legion's dagger section had already reorganized itself. However, both Wang Yiheng and the Soul Engineers from this dagger section had to keep one thing in mind. They were closer to the Star Luo Empire's base than the Mingdo mountain range right now. This meant that the Star Luo Empire's reinforcements might appear at any time. They might even be lying in ambush. A ball of blue light was flung into the air by Wang Yiheng. It transformed into an eyeball-shaped blue light. When the dagger section saw this ball of blue light, they quickly stopped before turning around and retreating. They were rushing back in the direction of the Mingdo mountain range. Fled. Seeing that the dagger section had escaped, Huo Yuhao didn't lower his guard at all. Instead, he became tenser. His spiritual detection immediately engulfed all his comrades. At the same time, he quickly drifted forward in front of everyone. Shusansha followed beside him, and the rest rapidly adjusted their formation under his command. Huo Yuhao was the furthest forward of the 8. Shusansha and Jiang Nannan were to his left and right respectively. Tang Wutong was behind him, while Ji Juechen and Jing Ziyan were to her sides. Yi Gai and Nan Qiuqiu were further back. The 8 of them circulated their soul power at the same time. The Mad Bull Doluo appeared very indifferent. His Empyrean blaze circulated around his body and took a stereoscopic form. He had turned into a huge bull and raging flames were burning, causing the entire sky to be illuminated fire red. He couldn't advance further. Otherwise, he might not make it back. Wang Yiheng had already decided that this was going to be his last attack. No matter whether or not he could kill his enemies, he wasn't going to remain, and would immediately return to the Mingdo mountain range after this. In the distance, 7 to 8 projections rose from the Star Luo Empire's base. From the speed of their ascension and the lights, it was evident that these people were very strong. One strike. He only had the strength for one strike. The Mad Bull Doluo's 7th, black soul ring shone brightly. In the next instant, he had already turned into a mad bull. His Empyrean blaze was still attached to him, causing him to look like a huge bull that was more than 30 meters tall. He instantly charged towards Huo Yuhao and the rest. The first from Shrek Academy to strike was Yi Gai. Her 5th and 6th soul rings lit up at the same time. Behind her, 4 wings shone brightly. Right now, she truly resembled an angel. Her slender figure moved rhythmically in the air, and her huge holy sword turned into glaring lights that instantly detached from her hand and slashed towards the charging bull. Her 5th soul skill, holy sword, and her 6th soul skill, angelic dance. Nan Qiuqiu made her move at almost the same time. The two of them coordinated perfectly with each other. Nan Qiuqiu's 5th and 6th soul rings also lit up. A long, pink sword shot into the sky and attached itself to the holy sword. Compared to the holy sword, it wasn't very eye-catching. However, when it left Nan Qiuqiu's grasp, the pinkish light that it exuded rapidly intensified. The sword was a pink crystal-like entity that exuded mesmerizing yet blurry pinkish lights under the illumination of the holy sword's golden light. Nan Qiuqiu clasped her hands in front of her. She wore a serious expression on her face as she pushed her hands forward. A spot of pinkish crystal that was the size of a fingernail flew out. When it flew out, Nan Qiuqiu's aura seemed to weaken a little. It was her 5th soul skill, Ruby Annihilation Sword, and her 6th soul, Star of Annihilation. The 2 sword lights combined and instantly landed on the bull's body. Clang! The holy sword was instantly crushed, and turned into countless streaks of golden lights that dissipated. Following this, the Ruby Annihilation Sword was also crushed. However, the combination of these 2 swords still managed to weaken the flames on the Mad Bull Doluo's body. After this, the Star of Annihilation arrived. The immense power of annihilation was demonstrated at this moment. The Star of Annihilation, that appeared to only be the size of a fingernail, caused bright, pink light to be released as it touched the flames. It imprinted itself on the Mad Bull Doluo's forehead. It was as if a piece of crystal had grown on the Mad Bull Doluo's head. The pinkish lights continued to grow stronger and stronger. The size of the Star of Annihilation also rapidly grew. During this process of enlargement, it absorbed the flames. The burning flames were completely ineffective against the power of annihilation. This was. Wang Yiheng was also shocked. It was his first time witnessing the strength of annihilation too. The strength of a mere soul emperor was actually able to weaken his Empyrean blaze and grow at the same time. How was this possible? The Star of Annihilation was Nan Qiuqiu's 6th soul skill. It was also her strongest soul skill right now. However, it was different from the 6th soul skills of ordinary soul masters. Nan Qiuqiu would drain more than 30% of her soul power to unleash her Star of Annihilation once. She even used up 50% of her soul power to unleash this particular strike. The best way to deal with the Star of Annihilation was to avoid it completely. Although it was very strong, there was one problem with it. It was that it couldn't lock onto its opponents. It could only fly forward. However, the Empyrean blazing bull was too huge. Furthermore, Wang Yiheng was a very conceited person. He had no intention of avoiding the strike. Because of this, he was directly struck. The effect of the Star of Annihilation was that it turned the enemy's strength into its own strength. When it devoured so much strength such that it reached its limit, it would. Boom! A major explosion ensued. The Empyrean blazing bull was rooted to his position before the flames around his body started to intensify. However, he was just releasing flames from his body. To overcome the Star of Annihilation, Wang Yiheng had no other choice. He could only increase the output of his soul power. Just as he had predicted, the Star of Annihilation could be filled until it was on the verge of bursting, even though it was very difficult to get rid of. However, the amount of power released by the Star of Annihilation was extremely great if it were to blow apart. Nan Qiuqiu's abilities weren't exceptional. However, her Star of Annihilation absorbed the strength of the Mad Bull Doluo. Given this, the Mad Bull Doluo would suffer greatly if it blew apart. The flames that the Mad Bull Doluo released would also weaken significantly. After the two ladies completed their attacks in the air, a sonorous dragon roar sounded. The dragon god's slaughter dance rose into the air once again, fluttering its dazzling, purple butterfly wings. It charged towards the Empyrean blazing bull. Huo Yuhao chose this timing. It was exactly when the Star of Annihilation had blown apart, and the Mad Bull Doluo's reaction was slightly delayed. The dragon god's slaughter dance formed shadows and collided strongly against the Mad Bull Doluo. Not only this, but a ball of dark purplish haze was following the dragon god's slaughter dance. This was Jing Xian's sixth soul skill, Mist Powder. The effect of her mist powder was very similar to the Star of Annihilation. When unleashed, the amount of soul power it drained was according to the intention of the soul master who unleashed it. The difference was that Jing Xian's mist powder was more thorough than the Star of Annihilation. Because of the power of annihilation, Nan Qiuqiu could only use 50% of her soul power to unleash her Star of Annihilation. However, Jing Xian could use up to 80% of her soul power on her mist powder. At such a time, why would Jing Xian conserve her power at all? When the dragon god's slaughter dance struck the Mad Bull, the purple lights had already turned golden. The sky cracked open, and countless streaks of golden light descended from the sky. They were like bolts of golden lightning that struck the Empyrean blazing bull's body. Every attack that landed made the bull weaker. The continuous attacks also caused the Empyrean blazing bull to advance at a slower pace. This was. Wang Yiheng wasn't the only one who was stunned. Everyone from Shrek Academy was astonished by what they saw. Tang Wutong had actually conserved some of her power, as she unleashed her dragon god's slaughter dance earlier, but she was demonstrating its true power now. It seemed like even a soul sage wouldn't be capable of such a strike. It had to be at the level of a soul doluo. After all, Wang Yiheng was a soul engineer. He was a class 9 soul engineer. He didn't have a great advantage in terms of his martial soul. This was why he resisted this series of attack using his Empyrean blaze. Angelic Dance, Holy Sword, Ruby Annihilation Sword, Star of Annihilation, and the fully unleashed Dragon God's Slaughter Dance greatly suppressed him. In the next instant, his huge body had already been engulfed by a ball of mist. The explosion of Jing Xian's mist powder led to pyrolysis. Pyrolysis occurred from within, generating immense splitting characteristics. The mist fused and engulfed the Mad Bull Doluor before splitting. The purplish mist instantly turned fiery red in the next instant before it dissipated. However, everyone could sense that a great amount of Wang Yiheng's soul power was robbed during this process of dissipation. A bright ball of golden light shone on Huo Yuhao's left. A black Xuanwu was glowing with golden light. It was the fusion of the golden tortoise, the Xuanwu true body. The viscous dark gold light surged towards the Empyrean blazing bull that was getting closer and closer. This caused the bull to slow down considerably. It was the Xuanwu's domain. It was the Xuanwu's domain that had fused with a golden tortoise. Water curbs fire. A Xuanwu was a godly beast that possessed both the water and earth elements. Along with the enhancements that a golden tortoise brought to a Xuanwu, this Xuanwu's domain was far stronger than when Shusansha unleashed it before. The bright golden light transformed into a shooting star that shone extremely brightly in the Xuanwu domain. Boom! Shusansha, who had turned into a Xuanwu, quickly summoned his Turtle God's Strike. Xuanwu True Body, Xuanwu's Domain and Turtle God's Strike, they were Shusanshi's 7th, 6th and 5th soul skills respectively. Shu Sanxia unleashed his full strength, as he unleashed all three of them at the same time. The heavy collision caused more than 50 Empyrean pearls in front of the Empyrean blazing ball to be crushed. But Shu Sanxi's golden Xuanwu was also flung backward, causing his Xuanwu's domain to dissipate. This was the difference between their abilities. If Shu Sanxia were also a titled Doluo, he would have been able to destroy Wang Yiheng with this attack. A huge pink python started to pester and wrap itself around the Empyrean blazing bull just as he stopped after colliding with Shu Sanxia. It was so huge that it didn't pale in comparison to the bull. As it wrapped itself around the bull, it managed to lock it tightly in the air. Soft bone lock. This was obviously Jiang Nanan's fifth soul skill, soft bone lock. Furthermore, the huge python was still releasing glaring, golden light. Invincible golden body. Jiang Nanan had actually unleashed two godly skills using her ruby soft tendon python soft bone lock and invincible golden body. Huo Yuhao, who had been calmly drifting in the air while commanding his comrades all this while, finally made his move. 2 rows of nozzles appeared behind his solo battle armor. These nozzles were located at the center of the 3 wings of his flying-type soul tool, just to the sides of his backbone. There were 18 of them. These 18 nozzles instantly released bright light. Behind Huo Yuhao, Tang Wutong had already flown up. She avoided these lights, whereas Huo Yuhao was like a shooting star as he charged towards Wang Yiheng. In the air, his entire aura completely changed. The look in his eyes was both deep and gentle, as if he was filled with boundless yearning. The intense emotions he was experiencing could even be felt by the rest of his comrades around him. A projection slowly formed behind him. This figure had ravishing looks and a slender figure. There was even a gentle smiling intent and a boundless look of longing on the face of this figure. Wasn't she Wang Donga? Right now, Tang Wutong had just risen high up in the air and saw everything clearly. When she saw Wang Donga's projection slowly forming behind Huo Yuhao, she could sense the boundless yearning that filled Huo Yuhao and the rich emotions that he was experiencing. She was completely stunned. An indescribable sense of pain instantly coursed through her entire body. She became a little dazed as she drifted in the air. Haodong palm, a palm that lasted eternally. Without using any soul skill or element, Huo Yuhao could only think of his Haodong palm right now. His 3 energies and inner emotions were fused together to form a self-invented soul skill. The 3 ultimate Haodong skills were undoubtedly the greatest skills that Huo Yuhao could unleash right now. On his forehead, his Eye of Destiny had long since opened. His 6th soul ring shone. His destiny's demise that came from Wang Qiu'er tore apart all material defenses and bore down on the Empyrean blazing bull. More accurately speaking, there was only a mad bull right now. This was because the Empyrean pearls had been crushed earlier and were yet to be replenished. Huo Yuhao was too quick. His instantaneous charge even caused a sonic boom. This was different from instant teleportation. Instant teleportation only enabled one to disappear and reappear in space. There wasn't any momentum to it. However, Huo Yuhao's charge was part of his fighting strength. His bright golden palm carried a boundless sense of yearning and longing as it struck the Empyrean blazing bull's forehead. The massive bull paused for a moment. Following this, a layer of bright red light was unleashed from its body. The red light appeared very quickly, but also dissipated very quickly. The moment it appeared, it was as if an eggshell had engulfed the bull. However, this eggshell was crushed as quickly as it had appeared, and Huo Yuhao's palm still managed to strike the mad bull's skull. A groan ensued, and all the flames on the Empyrean blazing bull's body dispersed, revealing the original form of the Empyreal pearls. However, the flames were soon drawn back. Even so, that split second that they had dispersed still caused more than half of them to dissipate. Among humans, Huo Yuhao was still considered rather large. However, he was much smaller compared to the Empyrean blazing bull. Yet, he still managed to forcibly stop Wang Yiheng's advance just like that. Huo Yuhao's eyes had already turned into 2 pupils. There weren't any enemies in his eyes anymore. There were only countless projections of Wang Donga floating in his eyes. He gave his all in this strike, venting his frustration and disappointment after he found out that Tang Wutong wasn't Wang Donga. This strike was the greatest strike that he had ever unleashed. He was deflected back. A streak of golden light instantly shone from his Eye of Destiny. The glaring, golden light landed on the head of the Empyrean blazing bull. It was very thin, but more than half of it managed to pierce through the bull's head. Destiny's adjudication. Golden Dragon Pike. At the same time, a trace of dark intent started to silently swirl up. From the sky, golden lightning struck. There was a guy who was holding his sword with both his hands, whose sword was pointing downward. The sword fanatic, who had yet to make a move, finally unleashed his strongest strike. Wang Yiheng had never expected these young soul sages to be so difficult to deal with. When he was pestered by the huge python earlier, he had immediately unleashed his full strength to break free. However, there seemed to be a layer of something which resembled an invincible barrier on the python which blocked off his attack. Before he could unleash his second attack, Huo Yuhao had already attacked him. The protective barrier that protected him was a blood Empyrean barrier, a passive, defensive type soul tool that he had personally invented. When his enemy's attack might threaten his life, it would be immediately activated on its own. Did my barrier malfunction? It's only the attack of a soul sage. Furthermore, he's only using his palm. How can he possibly threaten my life? However, his barrier revealed the answer in the next moment. This was because it was crushed. It had always been the case that defensive-type soul tools were more difficult to create than offensive-type soul tools. This was because attacks could be as devastating and chaotic as possible, while a strong defense required proper materials and techniques to achieve. It was even more difficult for passive defensive-type soul tools. This was why his blood Empyrean barrier wasn't a Class 9 soul tool, but a Class 8 soul tool. A Class 8 defensive-type soul tool had been crushed by a palm, just like that. How powerful was it? Furthermore, its strength didn't fall after destroying the barrier. It still continued to strike the Empyrean blazing bull. At that instant, Wang Yiheng only felt that his spiritual sea had cracked. Countless illusions surfaced in his head. There were friends he once had when he was young, his ex-lovers and his elders. A sense of yearning immediately flooded his brain. The remaining strength of the Haodong palm wasn't very much. However, under the effect of Huo Yuhao's destiny demise, Wang Yiheng's skull was struck loose. More importantly, he couldn't control his body after he was struck by the Haodong palm. This was the truly terrifying part. As a Class 9 soul engineer and titled Doluor, Wang Yiheng's willpower was undoubtedly very strong. He struggled to break free from such a state. However, the spiritual power that fused into his head didn't just cause pure destruction. It was more like a trigger. It triggered the deepest yearnings in his mind. A person would definitely have something or someone that he missed. Even Ji Juechen wasn't an exception. When Huo Yuhao's golden dragon pike stabbed into the Empyreal blazing bull's head, the terrifying spiritual power instantly surged into Huo Yuhao's body and replenished his drained soul power, whereas Wang Yiheng's body was shaking tremendously. He felt that his life was in danger. No. I don't want to die. Wang Yiheng was screaming in his heart, and wanted to break free from such a state. However, he was a soul engineer. Given his spiritual cultivation, he couldn't possibly compare to a rank 90 soul master. At this moment, how could he possibly quickly break free even as he tried his best? He was even surrounded by the massive ruby soft tendon python. Puff, when darkness descends, the light delivers judgment. The judgment sword fell from the sky as it carried the sword fanatic's sword intent. Destiny's demise reduced all physical barriers to nothing. Furthermore, the golden dragon pike had already wounded the mad bull Doluor. How could he possibly resist another attack? The black and white sword stabbed all the way through into the bull's head. It went completely through the bull's skull. Even though it was only a bull, it was still a martial soul true body formed by a soul master. This wasn't any different from stabbing Wang Yiheng's true forehead. No, how is this possible? How can I possibly die by the hands of such weak beings? Wang Yiheng was indignant. He shouted with all his might and summoned his terrifying soul power once again. The Judgment Sword and Golden Dragon Pike were both flung away by this destructive intent. Huo Yuhao and Ji Juechen suffered the same fate too. The ruby soft tendon python also turned illusory and returned to Jiang Nanan's body. Sparks flashed in the air. Empyrean pearls fell uncontrollably from the sky. The Mad Bull Doluor had already turned into a human once again. However, his forehead had been badly wounded. This video will end here.